Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing my September wrap-up and my October TBR. So for the month of September I read 7 books and 2 graphic novels, which I would say is pretty good considering all the things that I had going on in September. So let's just dive into the books that I read. The first book that I read I actually picked up like at the end of August and finished it around the beginning of September, and that is Bruiser by Neal Shusterman. I gave this book 4 out of 5 stars. I was very surprised by this book. I went into it not knowing too much about it, and I kind of expected it to be a contemporary novel, but it ended up being something entirely different, and I really loved it. And if you haven't checked out this book, I definitely recommend it. I won't go too much into what happened in this book because I don't really want to give anything away, but it is very good, so if you haven't read it, definitely check it out. The next book that I picked up is Survive the Night by Daniel Vega, and I gave this book 3 out of 5 stars. I picked this book up mainly because I read Merciless, I think last year, and I really enjoyed that book, so I decided to pick up Survive the Night and see if I liked it. To be quite honest, I didn't like it quite as much as Merciless. I wouldn't say that it's a really bad book, but it was a decent read. It wasn't the best. Merciless to me is definitely better than this book. The main character in this book's name is Casey, and we follow her as her and her friends go to like this rave that's in like this underground subway, I believe, and they end up getting trapped down there and they get lost and all these weird things start happening. All in all, it's a really interesting read, but it just wasn't up to par with Merciless, so I couldn't give this more than a 3. And the next book that I picked up is probably the worst book that I've read this year so far, and that is Lakhan by John Scalzi. This book to me was horrendous. I did a buddy read with this with Diana over at Dee's Journey, and I will link her channel down below. Definitely check her out. She's an awesome booktuber. But I did not like this book. It fell really short for me, and if you've checked this book out before, when you think about it, you think that it's going to be about this disease that's called a lock-in syndrome, and it's a contagious disease that attacks the entire globe. It says that victims are fully awake and aware but unable to remove or respond to anything, hence the name lock-in syndrome. And then it goes into other different diseases that develop and different things. I don't know. I thought that it was going to be more medically based around the lock-in syndrome and Hayden syndrome and the disease itself. But it actually focuses more on a criminal aspect of like someone getting murdered, and it's more of a crime novel than like a medical thriller, which was what I was expecting it to be. I ended up giving this a 1 out of 5 stars, which is the lowest rating I have given a book this year. I do not recommend this book personally. I did not like it, but if you like crime novels, like detective type books, you might actually enjoy this, and it does have kind of like a robotic take to it. It's kind of hard to explain. But if you like that kind of thing, you might enjoy this book. It just wasn't for me. Then I picked up The Sacred Lies of Minnow Bly by Stephanie Oakes, and I also did a buddy read for this book with Diana, and I really enjoyed this book. I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. It's about a girl who is basically brought into this cult community type thing, and there's the leader who is supposed to be like their, I guess like their disciple. I don't know a better term for that. I think they actually call him the prophet. So it's interesting, and when she tries to leave the cult, they end up chopping her hands off. And that is not a spoiler. It's actually on the summary of the book itself. So the book is intense, very well written, very good. I definitely recommend it if you like books like that. It's kind of, to me, has a psychological thriller aspect to it. It does touch on some sensitive subjects, so, you know, just use your best judgment if you are interested in picking this up, but I thoroughly enjoyed it. This next one, I don't know if I would consider it like a book. I consider it a graphic novel of sorts, and it is 100 Ghosts, The Gallery of Harmless Haunts by Doogie Horner. I'm pretty sure I put this in a haul recently from the secondhand books that I got, and this one just has all the different ghosts dressed up as different things, and I thought it was really cute and a good way to kick off October, even though I read it in September. I really liked it, and it took me a whole of like 5 minutes to read it or something. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. Very fun, fast read, and I thought it was really cute. Then I picked up The Walking Dead Volume 16, A Larger World. I really love these graphic novels so much, so I definitely gave this one a 5 out of 5 stars, and I can't wait to continue on with the series. I have Volume 17 and I have Volume 18 on the way, so I'm really excited to continue with this. It is so good. And for those of you that are wondering, I have started watching The Walking Dead, and it is nowhere near the graphic novels. It doesn't follow the graphic novels, like maybe a little bit, but hardly at all. So it's not really interfering with my graphic novel reading, which is awesome. Then I picked up Identical by Ellen Hopkins, and this book, man, if you've read Ellen Hopkins, you know how intense her books can be. This one was so intense that it almost put me in a reading slump. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. It was excellent, but it does touch on some very sensitive topics like sexual abuse and psychological disorders and eating disorders and binge eating, and it goes all across the board of different psychological aspects of things. It's really interesting considering how much I'm into psychology, but it is very difficult to read at some points, and the ending just blew my mind. I won't give anything away because if you're interested in reading it, I definitely want you to check it out. But just keep in mind that it can be very disturbing. But all in all, I did enjoy it and I do recommend it. So after that, I decided that I should go a little bit lighter on what I wanted to read. So I picked up Rebel Belle by Rachel Hawkins, and this book is so good. I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars. I really enjoyed it. It takes place in Alabama, which is my home state where I grew up, which I think is awesome. It follows a character named Harper, and she's like your typical Southern belle who goes to pageants and wants to be homecoming queen and things of that nature. And in the synopsis, it says that she ends up having to be a protector of this boy that she really dislikes and who's always picking on her and being mean to her. But this book was excellent. I really enjoyed it, and I cannot wait to pick up the next book, which I believe is called Miss Mayhem. I don't have it yet, but I'm really excited to get my hands on it. And the last book that I've read a lot of psychological books this month. This one is Every Last Word by Tamara Ireland Stone. You know, I was going to hold off on reading this, but I eventually decided to pick it up. And I actually finished it at like 2 a.m. this morning. I could not put it down. I read like over half of the book in one sitting. I was starving and I couldn't stop reading it to go get something to eat because it was that good. So obviously I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars. This book also has a lot of psychological aspects to it. It's about a girl named Samantha who's like in this clique of other girls, but she ends up finding this group of people that do poetry, and they do, I guess, what you would kind of call poetry slams. It's really interesting. I haven't read a book like this before. I know that there's a book that might be similar by Colleen Hoover that I haven't read yet, but I really enjoyed this book. I highly recommend it. The ending is just amazing. So if you haven't picked this one up, I definitely recommend it, especially if you're into like psychological books. This is a good one. So those are all the books that I read for September. I think that's pretty good, and I read some really awesome reads, which is great. So I'm going to dive right into my TBR for October. I kind of wanted to try to do like spooky books for October. However, I did request a book from my library and they had it in, so I went to pick it up, and it's Never Always Sometimes by Adi Al-Said. I'm probably pronouncing his name horribly wrong, and I apologize for that. But I have been interested in this book, so I requested it from my library and they got it for me, so I plan to read this one in the month of October. After that, I have a lot of spooky reads lined up. I don't know how many that I will get to. I have my big test for school coming up this month, so we'll just have to wait and see, but I did pick out quite a few so that I can kind of pick and choose what I'm in the mood for, although they are all kind of spooky reads. The first one is Frankenstein by Mary Shelley, because I have never read this and I really need to get on board with reading more classics, so I definitely want to check this one out at some point. It's fairly short. I don't know about the writing style, so I'm not sure how fast I can get through this, but hopefully I will read it this month. Then I picked out Fury by Alexander Gordon Smith. I don't remember what this book is about. Actually, let me read this for you real quick. It says, imagine if one day without warning the entire human race turns against you. One minute all is right with the world, the next every person you meet becomes a bloodthirsty savage. That's the terrifying reality for Cal, Brick, and Daisy. Friends, family, even their parents are out to get them. Their world has been infected with the fury. It will not rest until they are dead. That's not the whole synopsis, but it sounds pretty creepy to me, and the cover is kind of frightening. The book itself is quite large, so I'm not quite sure if I'll get to this one, but I really want to. I've wanted to read this book for quite some time, so I hope that I can get to it this month. The next book that I picked out is obviously a Stephen King book, and it is Pet Sematary. I've never read the book. I have seen the movie, but I really want to try to read the book and see how I like it. I was going to try to read a lot of Stephen King books in October, but some of his books are so large, I don't think I'm going to be able to do it. So I just decided to pick out one out of all the ones that I have, and this is the one that I chose. And lastly, I want to read a trilogy. I'm not sure if there's going to be a fourth book in this series, but the third one just came out. I want to read Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children. I read this when it first came out. I'm not sure, a couple of years ago maybe. So I want to reread this, and then I would like to move on to Hollow City because I haven't read this yet, and this series, I remember when I first read Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children, I really, really liked it. So I'd really like to continue on with Hollow City. And then his recent release is Library of Souls, which is the third novel in this trilogy, I believe. So hopefully I can get to this one and finish it out. I love this author so much, and I remember liking the first book a lot, so I really want to finish this. And they have really creepy pictures throughout the book. So I think it kind of falls into the category of creepy, Halloween-ish, you know, books for October. So those are all of the books that I plan to read for October. However, some other books might jump in, some graphic novels, some of the Walking Dead stuff, you never know. It kind of depends on what my mood is at the time, but we'll just have to wait and see. Hopefully I can get to most of those. Let me know in the comments if you've read any of these books and what your thoughts were about them. And also let me know what you're reading for the month of October. What's your favorite scary book? Let me know down below. But that is it for this video, you guys. I hope that you enjoyed, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!